We are now bombarded with so many distractions, so many notifications that focus feels impossible, especially for people with ADHD or a million different things on their plate. For the last 6 months, I have been testing a 5-step evidence-backed focus routine. It has taken me from struggling to work for just 30 minutes to being able to work through a 120-minute work session. If you use this and make it your own, there is no way that you will not achieve your goals in the next 6 months. Step 1 is to get clear. Now, I spent years self-sabotaging my focus before I'd even sat down at my desk. I would set aside 2 hours to get things done and somehow finish the work block only having done 20 minutes of actual work. And it wasn't because of external distractions. It wasn't my phone or people talking or getting interrupted. No, it was completely my own fault. Because I sat down knowing that I had hours of work to get through, but having no idea what I actually planned to do in that work session. This leads me to a theory that I have. I don't actually think that you hate work. Work can be challenging and uncomfortable and make you push yourself, but as long as it has some meaningful purpose behind it, you really don't hate it. What we do hate is working out what that work actually is and how to actually do it. It's the same thing as going to the gym. Once you're there, it's challenging and you push yourself, but it's not hard because it has a purpose behind it. What is hard is getting ourselves to the gym, figuring out what workout to do and how to do the exercises. And really think about this for a second. When you are in the zone, when you're 30 minutes into a work session, fully focused and making progress, work genuinely feels good. You finish that session so satisfied. What doesn't feel good is spending hours at your desk jumping between tasks feeling like you're getting nowhere. So the very first step to focus becomes before even starting the work itself. Anytime I go into a work session, there are 2 questions that I ask myself. What specific task or bunch of smaller tasks am I doing? And what specific action steps do I have to take to complete it? So if I have a work block in my calendar saying work on side hustle, this turns into write this week's newsletter. And I can then break this down even further into decide on the newsletter topic, create the outline, do background research, and so on. Or if I've written down work on X project, this will become create slides for part 1 of the project, which I can then break down into research and create first draft and edit. This removes a massive amount of uncertainty. If you tell yourself to work on a project, it's like telling someone to get a flight to Rome, but not telling them what gate number or even what day their flight is. They'll miss the flight because they're too busy working out how to actually get on it. When we get specific, we eliminate so many distractions that we do just as a form of procrastination, and we make it so much easier to just start the task. So if you want an intentional, focused work session, get clear on the task that you're doing, get clear on exactly what you have to do to complete the task, and start with the first step. I can guarantee you clarity is the one thing that will reduce 50% of your procrastination and distraction issues. Step 2 is to control your interruptions. There is nothing worse than getting in the zone just to be pulled out by some unnecessary distraction. An email, a tap on the shoulder, even having to go and get a glass of water. The interruption itself isn't the issue because 30 seconds isn't much in the context of an entire day. The real issue is the dip in focus that the interruption causes. Every time we switch our attention between 2 things, it takes an average of 23 minutes to become fully focused on the one task again. So if your work block is an hour, that's almost half of your work time gone. This is especially relevant for really deep, focused work. Now, you can't necessarily control distractions at all time unless you lock yourself up in a room somewhere. But there are things that you can do that lie within your control. So you can make sure that your notifications are turned off. Have any food or drinks that you need. Have your pen, paper, and laptop charger. And a really important one is blocking out focus time on your calendar and making sure that your family or your colleagues know that this is time for you and your deep work and not for interruptions and conversations with them. I've always done my most important work in the morning, but I used to face constant interruptions by my family during this time. And it frustrated me to no end because in my mind, they were ruining my focus time, which meant that they didn't actually care about my goals. But I had never once mentioned this to them. I never told them when this focus time was or why I didn't want the interruptions, the impact that it was having on me. They had no idea, and a lot of people in your life probably don't realize either, especially if they're not into productivity. One single conversation, communicating and setting expectations completely resolve the problem. You would be surprised at how understanding and accommodating people are when you simply explain to them why something is important to you. People don't need you to be available 24/7. They just need to know when you will be available. So take action to control these external interruptions, and then also remove your personal interruptions. So things like the notification, the food, or the water. This is how you make more focused work sessions that actually add up to change your life. Step 3 is to execute your pre-game ritual. Michael Phelps is an ex-Olympic swimmer, the most decorated athlete in Olympic history. He finished his career with 23 gold medals, the most of any competitor ever. At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, he was the first athlete to win 8 gold medals in a single games. Now, Phelps' success comes down to a lot of things: a really strong mindset, good genetics and body structure, a relentless work ethic and dedication, and self-education and the pursuit of excellence. But there's one thing that Phelps used that as mental athletes we can bring into our own routines: a pre-game ritual. Michael Phelps executed a consistent set of steps before every single race he did. He ate the same breakfast of eggs, oatmeal, and 4 energy shakes. He did the same stretching routine when he arrived at the pool. He did the same warm-up, a consistent set of strokes to prime his body and nervous system. He listened to the same music in the same set of headphones. Even his actions immediately before he was about to race were always the same. 2 different leg stretches, right headphone out, then left, always getting up on the swimming blocks from the left-hand side. Phelps' success relied on peak performance in the face of immense pressure. This ritual was what kept him in control, kept him laser focused on his own performance. Every time he did this pre-race routine, he was priming his mind. He was teaching his brain that doing this specific set of steps meant that he had to get into the zone. So as mental athletes, we can do the exact same thing. We can use a pre-game ritual that we do before every single work session, especially our focused ones. One that primes us for concentration and teaches our brains that it's time to get into the zone. And this really doesn't have to be long. Here's what my 2 to 3 minute pre-game ritual looks like. First, I eliminate distractions. I put my phone into its phone home on the other side of my room, and I shut down all the tabs on my computer except what I'm working on. You would be so surprised how much small changes like these have on maintaining your focus when you don't feel like focusing. This is because by nature, humans strive to reduce as much effort as possible. It's why society is always coming out with more ways to do less. So when you close down your internet or social media tabs, or you turn off your Wi-Fi when you don't need it, or you put your phone across the other side of the room, it adds a little bit of extra resistance to using that thing. Instead of distraction being really instinctual and easy, it takes a little bit more effort, so we're less likely to do it. By adding these into your pre-game ritual, you make a habit of eliminating your distractions and make your focus so much easier. The second thing that I do is go to my focus room in Notion, and I only created this page recently, but it's become one of my favorite things. It's got my pre-game ritual checklist, it's got a Pomodoro timer, and that's it, nothing else to distract me. Because humans are so quick to form associations, my brain has slowly started recognizing that going to this focus room means that it's time to get into the zone. So no matter where I am physically, I can open this room on my laptop and some part of my brain identifies that it's time to focus. The third thing that I do is stare at one single spot for 30 seconds, and I know this sounds absolutely insane. Right before I start each work session, I pick a single spot on the wall and I stare directly at that spot for 30 to 60 seconds. I just focus on my breathing and let any thoughts that come up just pass by me. This is because visual focus actually improves mental focus. When we stare at one specific object for a longer period of time, our field of vision narrows down, our sympathetic nervous system activates, we blink less often, and dopamine and adrenaline are released in our brains. All of these things actually improve our focus and make it easier to ignore background noise and distractions. We basically prime our body for alertness, which then carries across to our mind as well. This is an eye-gazing exercise called Trakata, and some Chinese schools have actually started to implement this to improve students' focus and attention. This is genuinely incredible and actually blows my mind every time. We can simply stare at one spot on the wall for 30 seconds and improve our ability to do our work. Give it a go now before you keep watching this video and see if you notice any difference. Okay, so we know exactly what we have to do. We've removed all of our distractions and we've done our pre-game ritual, so we're actually ready to focus. You've actually already done a massive chunk of the work, but what do we do when we actually start the work itself? How do we avoid temptations and stop our minds wandering? Despite what you might think, you're not actually meant to be able to work for 2, 3, 4 hours straight, especially if that work is really demanding. There's a reason that you're not supposed to drive for more than 2 hours in a single trip. I've done another video talking about our circadian rhythm, our 24-hour body clock. But within these 24-hour cycles, we also have smaller periods called ultradian rhythms. Every 90 to 120 minutes, your body has a period of high alertness followed by a period of fatigue and recovery. So we can use these peaks when we are at our most productive to get way more work done, and then use the dips to fully rest and recover instead of trying to push through those periods where you're really unproductive and you're actually putting your body into a state of stress. So here is how I work with my ultradian rhythms to get the most out of my work sessions and be as focused as possible. I work for 90 to 120 minutes. Now, this is enough time to get some meaningful work done, but not so much that I start getting unproductive. This could be made up of one task for the entire time, or it could be a bunch of smaller, similar tasks that I've already got ready. Basically, you want to do as little task switching within this period as possible. This isn't a set amount of time that you should necessarily use. It's going to depend on your natural biology and the amount of focus that you've built up, because focus really is a muscle and we can build it up over time. But if you're just starting out and you're currently getting distracted every single work session, then don't expect yourself to be able to focus for a full 2 hours, because it's not going to work. So I would suggest starting with maybe 60 to 90 minutes and then building up from there. The second thing is that I use the Pomodoro method. So within these 90 to 120 minute work blocks, I don't just work through the entire period. I use the timer in my focus room to do 25 minutes of work and 5 minutes of rest. I'll repeat this 3 to 4 times, and then at the end, I'll take a longer break to really relax and refresh. Our world is so filled with stimulation that it's really, really hard to focus for a full 90 minutes, especially if you are someone who has ADHD, who hasn't built up their focus muscle, or has to work really hard to overcome procrastination or work on a task that's really challenging for you. So splitting this longer period into 3 to 4 smaller sessions keeps you really on track and motivated. I also find this really positive because it switches my focus from trying to achieve a certain outcome or finish a certain task to just completing as much as I can within a certain time period. And for me, it brings out a competitive edge as well. It makes me want to get as much done as possible in the time that I have and even try and beat what I did last time. Now, this isn't a strict rule. Sometimes I will work for 50 minutes and take a 10-minute break. Sometimes I'll sit down and work for 2 hours straight if I get into a really good flow state. It's simply a guideline that you can try and something that I generally use and find helpful. So if you have found yourself constantly distracted in your work sessions, try this method for just 1 week. Allow your brain to adjust and you will see just how much difference working with your body can make. Step 5 is to rest between sets, going back to the gym analogy. Now, for me, and I think a lot of people, we find physical rest pretty easy. We know when our bodies need to sleep, we can sense when our muscles need to recover, and we know that if we push too hard, then we'll end up injuring ourselves and being out for longer. But as a really ambitious and driven person, mental rest is something that I've personally found pretty hard. Our minds aren't really something that we can feel as such, so it makes it harder to tell when we're really tired. Technology also means that work is accessible 24/7, and societal norms mean that we're expected to be on 24/7. So we fall into this trap of working until our brains can no longer work properly. We keep going until we reach a point of burnout and overload, and only then do we actually allow ourselves to rest. The reality is, deep work requires deep rest. If we want to be switched on and focused, we have to allow our minds to also switch off. And honestly, we always reach a point where resting is way more productive than working. If you have ever tried to work into the night and felt like your work feels so hard, only to wake up the next morning feeling like it's the easiest thing in the world and wondering why you had such an issue with it, it's because your brain was just too tired. So like the best gym routines, the best focus routines also require rest. You wouldn't finish a set of squats at the gym and use your 3-minute rest to go and do deadlifts. It completely defeats the purpose of even having a rest period to begin with. So our brains, like our bodies, need to re-energize and not just switch to focusing on a different task. If the Pomodoro method hasn't worked for you, then I can almost guarantee that it's because of how you've been using the 5-minute rest periods. I used to get into really bad task switching in these periods. I would check my emails, look at my phone, get a quick head start on a personal task, or go on social media, or even read a book. Now, we spoke about this earlier. Our brains are sticky. Every time we do one thing and then we switch to something else, a little section of our brain stays on that task that we were previously doing. This is called attention residue, and it can take up to 23 minutes for your attention to return fully to the task that you're trying to work on. You can do the maths. That's basically your entire next Pomodoro session. So instead of task switching, I do something that doesn't require any focus from my brain. Things like cleaning my room, putting the washing on, letting my mind just wander, or going for a quick walk or to the bathroom or to get water. If you also struggle with rest, then I really encourage you to start seeing it as just as important as your work. See it as you would in exercise. Make sure that you take that rest period, because the better you rest, the better you will be able to work. So it's officially time to create your focus routine. Step 1 is to create a dedicated time to get really clear on the tasks that are in your to-do list or on your calendar for this week. Step 2 is to set up your desk for maximum productivity, and I have done a video on this if you need some inspiration. Step 3 is to establish your distraction-free times and make sure that you communicate this with anyone who needs to know or who could interrupt you. Step 4 is to create your pre-game ritual, and keep this simple. Make it something that you can do before every work session. Otherwise, if it's too complicated, you just won't do it. Step 5 is to schedule your work in 90 to 120 minute blocks. And step 6 is to use the Pomodoro method to make sure that you stay focused and motivated within these work blocks. The point of this isn't to make your work sessions really serious or really intense. It's just to make sure that you get the most out of them so that you have more time to do what you really want to do. Whether that be improving your health, pursuing a side hustle, spending time with your family, or going the extra mile for your career. So take the next 6 months and make it yours. Everything that you need is right here. As always, thank you so much for being here. If you found value in this video, please like and subscribe, and drop anything else you would like to see in the comments below.